And what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Axioms on Trial. I am your co-host, J. Mike, and alongside me always is Cease to Know. How you doing, brother?
Doing great. I'm glad to be back. It's been a little while.
Yeah, me too. If you guys watched our last episode, I sat down with Dr. DeLockery about the problem of evil and God's actions within the the Old Testament. I'm sorry. We were having him back on actually to discuss with Cease, I think on December 2nd. We're still kind of confirming those things before we get settled on that. But you looking forward to it, and what are you hoping to discuss?
Great. I'm excited to talk with him, and just he seemed like a nice guy. I watched the episode. It was a good conversation, and I'm looking forward to having him back on. I think it'll be good.
Yeah, Matt's awesome. He's definitely open to admitting whether he knows something or not, and I always appreciate that because that's not something that I feel like a lot of people are comfortable doing. They just kind of want to roll with acting as if they can answer all those questions, and it's okay just to say I don't know. I think that's pretty much our premise for a lot of things.
It's much more intellectually honest to just say that when you don't know.
Exactly. And so we actually a couple things going on. So we have that show going on. Arjuna is supposed to come on at some point to have a discussion with Cease. There's a couple people Matt have recommended to us as well, so we'll have them come on. And I've got some pretty exciting news that I can't necessarily share yet, I don't think. But after Tuesday, I will be able to. I will just give a hint that a popular atheist call-in show, I possibly will be doing a guest appearance, and you have a 1 out of 3 guess of what that possibly could be. So take your guess there, and hopefully that happens. But let's get right into the meat of it. What do you? Why don't you walk us through, ever so gently, basically what prompted this and why we are doing this review of an email that I will put forth was asked of us to do. So we are not talking behind someone's back or anything like that. This was asked by the person because he didn't want to make an appearance, and for those reasons I won't get into. But he said it was okay to discuss this. He actually asked us and urged us to. But that all out of the way, Cease, what is kind of a background info on this that you feel is necessary?
So let me start by saying that whenever I talk to people who see the world differently than I do, I try to do so in a way that's respectful, in a way that's sort of contributes to the conversation. I don't I challenge ideas, but I try to not get personal, and I try to be civil. What I can't stand and what I don't have patience for is unearned arrogance and sort of dishonesty, intellectual dishonesty. And we sort of debated back and forth, you and I, about whether or not we were even going to do this. And even though I don't particularly want to give this person any more attention than he already has, he does reflect some arguments that I hear from religious people pretty often that I think are problematic. And so I wanted to address those. But it's also, I'll acknowledge I can be a little bit petty at times. And when this guy, he's on TikTok, which is another reason why even bother. But
we should add that he's got 50,000 plus followers. So a lot of minds that are digesting the information he gives. So.
And that's kind of the thing. I think people who follow him need to know where this information is coming from, the kind of person it's coming from, because he made a video challenging atheists, saying, "Atheists, where are you at?" Making it seem like he's wants to debate or wants to have a dialogue, and he's doing so in a way that's like, not, hey, let's have a conversation, but I'm challenging you guys to respond to my claims, and you're all running scared. It's a sort of type of feeling and vibe that a lot of his videos seem to suggest. And he does this in a very condescending and arrogant way. And so from my perspective, it's like, okay, that's fine. I mean, if that's the sort of tone you want to do it, that I don't have a problem with that. You know, all for freedom of speech. But in that case, back up your words. You know, if you put up a challenge, then come on our show and let's have that conversation. Now, if you don't want to have that conversation, because, you know, the reality is that, you know, I know a couple of people we both know, like this guy and I have some what's the word? Like, should we say who it is? I mean,
we didn't have to.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Yeah, that's who it is. It was brought to my attention from some other people that I will not name that, and this is true for many religious people and people in general, that he's uncomfortable engaging in real time. He's more comfortable sort of having the script in front of him, having an exchange through email. Like, that's the avenue that he prefers, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, I would agree that's fine, but the intent of...
But acknowledge that that's the reason. Say, look, because it's not an issue of time, because, you know, it's because an hour of your time, when, you know, like that's, you know, I'm a master's student and I work from home and I'm trying to finish up a 200-page thesis, like, and I make time to do the shows. Like, it's not like so that's ridiculous. You know, acknowledge the fact that you're not interested in that type of format, and then leave it at that. And then we can have the conversation through email. But be honest about it. Don't say, atheist, where are you at? And then say, I'm not going to come on the podcast because they're too prideful and are unwilling to learn. So why would I waste my time? Yeah. When, first of all, you don't fucking know me. Okay, I'm open to whatever evidence you have if you have good arguments. I'm open-minded. You saw me when we were talking to T-Jump, who, yes, he's a non-believer as well, but we have a different philosophy of morality to some degree. And when he made good points, I didn't just argue to argue. I said, okay, you have a point there. I need to process what you're telling me.
Sure.
So if a theist comes on and makes a good point, I'm not going to pretend like that's not the case to win points, right?
Yeah.
So so the whole thing really, it seemed very disingenuous, and even if he was right that somehow we were too close-minded to have our souls saved, then it's like, okay, but what about the audience watching the video? Because you might not change our minds, but you might change somebody else's mind that's watching. You might save somebody else who may be an agnostic, because we have all kinds of people watching us, what we're doing. So it just excuses. It just excuses to try to save face in front of his followers, because he didn't expect to be called out and to have someone respond. Mm-hmm. And so that's the thing that kind of set me off. It's like, I'm okay with you not wanting to do a certain format, but don't bullshit us. Don't talk shit and then get scared when you're called out. I don't have any respect for that kind of thing.
Yeah. And so that kind of, and Cease had mentioned there was some hesitance to it, and the hesitance kind of came in an aspect of where I don't want necessarily someone on the show that can't defend themselves. That was kind of my biggest thing. And once I was reading through the emails, Cease had already kind of gone through them, before I had been able to get to the end of it, because my whole problem with it was, and what I try to express is, look, I'm a programming, major that's, bridging into computational biology. So like all I do is code and look at a computer screen, and a lot of my assignments are debugging things. I'm just constantly like pedantically looking, for mistakes and on my screen. And so the last thing I want to do is go look at an email. I'd rather engage. You know what I mean? I want to have a conversation. Sure. I want to sit here with my hands like this, not gripping my neck because it hurts so bad, you know, from sitting in the same position. And so I that was my perspective on that was like, well, it looks like we're only going to be able to do this in dialogue format since we're not conducive. But then I read the part where he was, please share this on your podcast and go over this. He's like, I want you to. It's in the email. And so I pulled that up and I put basically the basis of his email on there on a Word document for his privacy and for our privacy, but just to have it so that we're viewing it on something where people aren't going to go after him if they see his email. We don't want that. We don't want anybody doing anything of that nature. But this isn't a video that's going to necessarily be just about this guy or his arguments. These are common thread arguments that we hear a lot. And so it kind of bridged the gap of, well, you want us to talk about this, and these are also kind of things that you're raising pretty common points. And so kudos to him for doing that in the sense of that you're going to give us actual good material to talk about on the show. And so I think it is valuable to do. And so do you want to just go ahead and we can throw it up on the screen? And
one last comment, your concern about, well, you didn't want to talk about him when he couldn't defend himself. It's like we gave him every opportunity to defend himself and he chose to reject it. And because again, I think a lot of people have their script, and because they don't actually do philosophy and are used to critical thinking and having their views challenged in a variety of ways, when that script is challenged, they freeze because they didn't think of every possible response to the argument. They found an argument that it rings true to them, and then they leave it at that. So of course, so many people that I try to get on the show refuse because they're scared of having their assumptions challenged, which is fine. But then don't talk shit. That's the thing. It's like in that case, don't talk shit.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. I mean, if you're gonna kind of expose yourself to a challenge, I'm fine if you say, "Hey, I don't want to do debate." That's okay. But my followers were tagging him. His followers were tagging me. It's just instigating more and more. So my whole thing was, let's just have a conversation. And since we can't have that, we'll have the next best thing, which is his approval of going kind of through part of this email. And so I'll go ahead and list it up there. I did a really bad job at first. I wanted to highlight some things on there, but we'll try to go through it fast and whatnot if we can. If we miss some things, I apologize. Be sure to just email me again, and we'll go over that in the second part. But because there are about 1,000 questions in this email,
it's ridiculous.
I don't think we'll get through all of them, but we'll try.
900 of which are completely pointless.
Yeah,
900 of which are
ironic name there too. That it's pointless. But anyway,
exactly, that's me.
So I guess we could start out at the beginning. It kind of just goes into why my TikTok handle is Atheist Jesus. That was just given to me. We don't need to spend too much time on that. I didn't name myself that. It was just people, hey, you look like Jesus and you're atheist. And so I changed it from like hide and seek Sky Dad or something like that to Atheist Jesus. So it's that simple.
But I will point out that he already started the first exchange by dishonestly pretending like you have a particular gripe with Christianity, as opposed to, dogmatism in general.
But then leaves this line there.
Right. So it's like, I didn't, he says, you're right to say I didn't examine your page for long. Well, then why are you making general claims about what it is that Mike is doing?
Why Jesus? Why? Right. All of this. Yeah.
So right away, it's like he's already showing his true colors by approaching it that way.
Yeah. And so then it goes on to, what's the point? What is your purpose? Is that your meaning? But that would just mean that your purpose is to hate others' purposes. So to speak for myself here, the point for me is pretty simple. I love life. I think life is absolutely awesome. And what I really love about life is what people think about it, what they think is true about the reality that they experience. What I find most fascinating is people that believe in absolute truth or a foundation for absolute truth, because I'm from a perspective that I don't think really anybody knows. As far as I can tell, naturalism and just a natural world seems to fit that bill as an explanation better than anything beyond that. But my purpose isn't to put people down. My purpose is that if somebody's walking around with a chip on their shoulder and they think they know the fundamental nature of reality, cool, show me. I'm going to challenge you, because I am not convinced that you do know. I don't think anybody knows. And so I think it's an arrogant belief to walk around saying that you do know. So that's where the arrogance doesn't come from me. It doesn't come on my side. It's on the side of the people that think that they do know. I'm just challenging. I'm trying to provide the little, maybe this isn't aptly put, but the little devil on your shoulder that's gonna, are you sure, that's the actual methodology you want to apply there, or however we could go into it. But my purpose is, he asked a bunch of purpose about life, and we'll get into that, right? But my purpose in terms of why I do what I do or things like that, well, one, the handle causes attention. It makes you look. So if I can grab you to look, then maybe you can look at the content that I'm saying. But number two, I don't have anything to do with this, right? So if I die tomorrow, the validity of your claims will remain the same. They're either true or they're not. I don't have anything to do with the truthfulness of your claim at all. And so it's kind of almost a non sequitur to throw it back on me, because none of this has to do with me. It has to just do with the objective truth of the claim. And so when you go to me, why do you do this? Why? It seems like you're getting emotional about it, when in reality you should go, oh, well, yeah, this is true. I am making an objective claim, and someone might not agree with me. Someone might actually take it to the next step and say, this has been proven to be false. And in this case, I do think Christianity has met that burden of proof of being a false hypothesis for how we came to be. And so my purpose is to expose that, because I think that if people are okay with accepting magic as an answer, or if you teach kids that allowing magic is an answer, then it creates adults that are okay with accepting magic as an answer, and we don't progress. If I have kids, they're going to be living in a world where people aren't taking it very seriously. And the purpose that I find is discovery. Like, that is the purpose. Like, how awesome is it when you say, we have this hypothesis, and someone's, well, do you know? How do you know? You don't know. It's like, no, we don't, but that's what's awesome. That's a discovery waiting to happen that we could have knowledge about. And that, to me, you could think that's nerdy or whatever, but I think that's so cool. Like, I love, like, the Bill Nyes of the world that, that are pressing that type of, hey, we might not know, but wouldn't it be cool to get to the point where we do know? And if we actually intellectually, honestly do this, maybe your conclusion is right, but you're never going to get there by not actually challenging it. And so long-winded, that would be that.
And to sort of off of what you just said, it's because these people lack, a way to defend their arguments, that they start to play armchair psychologist to try to tell you what your motivations are for why you do what you do. Mm. Pretending like you're doing this because you have hate inside of you, as opposed to maybe you just have fucking terrible arguments. And I only get into the psychology of religious people after I've broken down their arguments, shown why they fail, and then try to answer the question as to why do these people still believe these things. Then maybe I might talk about psychology. But for the most part, I'm dealing with the arguments themselves, not trying to, break down the psychology of individuals. Certainly not from the beginning. So again, it's just, and the whole issue of pride here is going to return a number of times, because he accuses us of being prideful when fancying himself some kind of teacher that who's not, who other people aren't worth his time. So whatever.
And to tack on to that last part before we move on, it's the part I didn't highlight in that is I'm only seeing that you've decided that your purpose is to attack the purpose of others, and you can view it that way if you want. My purpose is to challenge. It's as simple as this: if your purpose is true, the thing that you hold near to you, the foundation you have serves as the purpose, and it is objectively true. It shouldn't be, in any sense of the word, scared of investigation. Sure. It should be like, bring it, like
right,
rock,
exactly.
like rock style, bring it. Like, I want to show you true. But what you get is you actually get kind of this opposite. Why do you care so much? Why does it bother you? Or,
right? Why are you obsessed with us?
Or it doesn't need science to prove it. And then when they do those kind of things, it's, well, let me take this thing and remove it from the situation where it has to go through the rigorous standards that every claim has to go through. And so you're always pulling back this curtain in that sense. But not to spend as much time on the first few paragraphs of this. But
well, just one other thing. As far as meaning, from my perspective, it's simple. It's just engaging in the things that I'm passionate about that give me fulfillment. Part of that being the search for truth, the search to try to understand my place in this world, and trying to make the world a better place. And in doing that, that requires looking at what ideas run the world, whether they're religious, political, other types of ideologies, and figuring out what impact are these ideas having on the world. And if it's a positive one, how do we embrace that? If it's a negative one, how do we call that out and try to challenge these ideas? It's not until we hate. It has to do with wanting the world to be a better place.
Yeah, agreed. And I agree with Charlie's statement. I strictly adhere to wood chipism. I'm all about that wood chipism. Now you wrote, I predominantly exploit Christian beliefs and talk points because it's rational, different from my daily life, subordinated legislation, education. Yep. And so my specific response to him was, to exploiting these is irrational, is because they beyond just the kind of let's have a conversation about it. The reason why I want to even exploit it in a lot of aspects is because of, and we don't have to spend very much time on this. This is just, I'll just put it this way. My roommates couldn't have even gotten married, a few years ago. Right. So that's strictly due to these types of legislations enforced by religious beliefs. And so that's just an extra thing on that, but we'll move on, get away from the singled out thing on me and get more into the arguments. And I want to kind of see what you think about the atheism has been the cause for the most wars and death. We might have to make this. I'm realizing we're going to have to make this like a 2 or 3 part thing, because each one of these sentences, I feel like we could go on for forever. But what would you say about the, I know this one probably gets to you more.
I mean, it's so severely stupid. It's so ignorant about history that it's just, I mean, this guy, oh my God.
It's like the Jordan Peterson response, right?
No, don't. I mean, as much as I don't like Jordan Peterson, this is way more embarrassing than anything Jordan has ever said.
Sure.
This is like the Ken Ham level. Like, how much Ken Ham doesn't understand science, this guy doesn't understand history or philosophy. Even worse, probably. Like, no, you know what? There are bachelor degree students who take an introduction to philosophy, like a 101 class, that have a better understanding of these topics than this guy does, with all his articles that he publishes on his website. Number one, nobody's saying that all the harm that comes from religion or religious people is done, even if it's in the name of religion, doesn't necessarily always come because of religion. Some people are just evil and want to do harm and use religion as an excuse. Now, other times, these people would otherwise be moral, but are manipulated by Scripture to believe some very immoral things. So sometimes religion can be a cause of immoral behavior. Atheism is not a worldview. Atheism is not being convinced by one claim. Has no position on morality, one way or another. So for him to claim that it's because of atheism that these dictators kill the people is just embarrassing. You have to look at what else these people believe. They may have been atheists, but they weren't motivated by atheism to do what they did. They were motivated by power, by beliefs about politics, like political beliefs, economic beliefs,
Well,
If
that's
you're
all of what it was about, right? It's state forced. I mean, even if it's state forced Christianity, state forced atheism, state forced whatever it would be in that regard. I mean, the underlying reasons for that is why they're doing that, right? I mean, economic or other reasons.
and their governments functioned exactly like a theocracy, just without the supernatural, component to it. Now, of course, someone like him is going to say, well, this is what happens when you worship yourself as opposed to worship God. And it's like, no, because we saw what the church did and the violence that caused. No, this is what happens when you lack a moral philosophy and you're a psychopath who gets into power and you lack any kind of empathy.
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with skepticism. These were not skeptical governments. North Korea is not the poster child for secularism. Their entire government runs on propaganda.
Yeah.
So anybody that tries to claim that these regimes are the cause of atheism is just laughably ignorant of history. I mean, it's laughably so. And his claim right before this part is he says, right after, he says, on what standard are you judging goodness? It's the usual low IQ response by theists who don't know any philosophy. So as I've said many times on the show before, and I'll try to keep it quick because people are probably sick of me saying this. The only thing you need to judge whether or not something is good or bad is phenomenology, is consciousness. The same way that you would say that spending an eternity in hell is bad, as opposed to spending an eternity in heaven with God is good, is because you recognize that well-being and suffering are states of consciousness that exist, that objectively exist. Now, the concept may be open-ended. We may not always have the answers as to how to best organize society to flourish as opposed to suffering. It's an open project, okay? But the fundamentals are already there in naturalism. You don't need an authority figure, okay, to exist for me to know that rape is wrong. I can recognize that it's wrong by the mere fact that I exist in this world in the way that I exist, and my actions have the consequences that they do on my psychology and the psychology of others. So that's all that needs to be said there. It's not rocket science.
Yeah, I mean, you're comparing. It's as simple as you're comparing something of do it because I told you so versus, well, I actually analyzed the dilemma and figured out it's wrong because of these reasons, because of this action, because of this consequence, right? Like you have much better, like I think it's a deontologist and the kind of consequentialist aspects of morality. It's like even people I feel like that wouldn't consider themselves like a consequentialist, like those ideas of basing your morality based on the consequences of these actions, they would even admit that is a much more appropriate approach than, well, this thing's nature is all good. Well, what if that thing's nature is slaughtering infants in 1 Samuel 15:3? What if that happens to be the case? Does that now mean that is the standard of goodness? Well, he can just do whatever he wants. It's like, well, I mean, then that's no different than this what separates that from a North Korean regime other than the fact that this thing just created you? And it's a weird thing because it's like, you got to think of this in just a like pragmatic, just think about it like this way. I mean, it's kind of comedic, but this God exists. It hasn't created humans. It looks around and it goes, this is awesome and all, but I need to make things so that they can worship me. Like that's essentially as selfish as you get in regards to a foundation for anything right.
And it's ironic that these people are arguing for objective morality while creating a completely subjective framework that's up to God's, whims.
Yeah.
And he says here, the next part you highlighted is, first of all, I don't know what he says. If life is ultimately nothing, which nobody's saying, then you are nothing. It wouldn't matter if you're MLK or Hitler. So because life is meaningless and leads to nothing, then nothing matters. It's like, who said that? You have centuries of philosophy outside of the religious tradition that ground existentialism in something real, in our condition in the world. If all your life, if the only meaning you get is if Sky Daddy is true, then that's your weakness. That's your problem. I'm not so I'm not so limited and constrained, and I have more creativity than that.
Well, it's worse than that, because it's like, well, God gives me purpose, right? God created me, gives me purpose. I don't think is like, if I just said life gives me purpose, like, I don't see the fundamental difference for me just to use that as the. So I guess a better way to put it is like, if you have, like, I always use the example, like, I have a cat. Like, I know it's going to die in 16 years when I get the cat, right? Like, ultimately, I'm not going to have the cat anymore. It's not going to last forever. But that's exactly what gives it the meaning and the value. It's only nothing to me if everything just lasts forever in some eternal space, because how do I gain value on the cat and the love for the cat if I'm ultimately know it's going to be there at always, right? If I'm going to lose this thing that I love or that I value, or the car that I drive is going to end up in the landfill someday, aren't I going to take care of it more? Aren't I going to value it more? Aren't I going to have more purpose for everything that I do? Like, in terms of, there's more purpose of me checking my brakes and stuff, because I know it's finite. I know it's not going to last forever. I mean, it's or not intrinsically, but it's almost inherent to the property of it not lasting forever. So I don't understand that argument of like, well, it wouldn't matter. It's like, well, I'm experiencing, the experience is the only prerequisite that I need,
right?
Precondition that I need for it to have value. I don't need anything else. And
this is where the conversation about psychology matters, because what those people are really showing is that unless they believe that life will go on forever, then nothing matters, which is insane to me. It's like, a song isn't less beautiful because it ends. The love I have for my friends and family isn't meaningless because at some point they're going to die or I'm going to die. It's meaningful because I'm alive here to experience it. That's all that needs. That's all that you need. That's all that is meant by meaning. So,
yeah, and we were talking about Breaking Bad earlier. Like, would you want to watch that series last forever, or would you want it to end? Right. I mean, like, it's a weird concept to me. Yeah.
So again, this arises out of a psychological weakness and a psychological disregard or lack of appreciation for life. That's the only way you can spiral into this kind of nihilism. I've been an atheist for 16 years now. Not once have I believed or bought into the nihilistic picture of the world. So yeah, let's move on.
Yeah. So, he goes on to say, like, if we don't have the ultimate purpose, why bother to spend your time against God? What's the meaning in that? Well, the meaning in that is that I care. Well, first off, there's it's like multiple pronged here. One, I share space with other people. If I didn't share space with you, I wouldn't care. I really probably wouldn't, which is why I wrote earlier, I predominantly exploit Christian beliefs. And honestly, if I could kind of take back that, it was probably not the best way to word that. I don't predominantly do it for that. I think that the biggest, I predominantly do it because it's not true, right? It just, the evidence shows it's not true, and people base their life on this. The part about the legislation and those kind of things, that is something that where I'm spending my time because I see people get affected. And when I did a show with Austin, Oz from the Atheist Roundtable, and seeing him come from a background of ministry and spending 30 plus years of his life just to go, this is all bullshit. Like, every bit of this was wrong, and I wasted my entire life believing in this. And he's somebody who was in the ministry, right? You have the Clergy Project, right? Where pastors are trying to get help. They are preaching, knowing that they don't believe this anymore, and trying to get help from other people. So it's not black and white for somebody to say, why do you spend your time on this? You don't see that negative side. You're around the community. You don't have these pastors and these people who are deeply affected, feeling like they're wasting their life. you don't see them doing that because a lot of that's behind doors. It's behind closed doors. The same way, with children being, having horrible things happen to them, not in just the Catholic Church, but in all the churches that they're being moved around in this sense. There's those reasons alone are enough for me to go, hey, I'm seeing a lot of harm come from this.
Especially towards the LGBTQ community.
Yes, exactly.
Under the guise of, it's out of love that we're trying to save them, as opposed to fuck you. There's no saving needed. There's nothing wrong with these people. You are discriminating against them based on delusions, and it's that's why we do this, because we're trying to make the world a better place, and religion is a roadblock to that.
Yeah. And I'll try to speed it up here. Let's see. I think it is. I should have highlighted some of these over here. That, of course, unless your purpose to attack, destroy other purpose. But he's asked the same question like 17 times.
Yeah.
Either your purpose is pointless because it needs nothing. Any good you do here.
Which we already answered that.
Yeah. So then he goes into your purpose against others. Sorry, pointless. If you feel like we didn't address something, I'll redo that. But you ask the same question too many times. Finally, you wrote, you failed to understand. I genuinely look into religions and desperately want to understand truth if it's out there. If have you discovered any knowable truth? Do you believe truth is absolute or relative? Whoops, I think I don't know what happened there. Is it up?
Yeah, it's back. Oh, wait, it skips.
I guess I have to leave it up on the screen. I apologize. Reality is objective. Like, if reality objectively exists, I don't have a problem with that. I don't know if you come from a similar position, Cease, but I would consider myself from like a foundational standpoint of, when you get into kind of the how do you know anything kind of thing. I consider myself an epistemic solipsist, someone that, I can start from the position that I know I exist,
right,
and then kind of build off from that. And so from that standpoint, the only thing I'm certain about is that I'm experiencing. So I think there is certain truth in that. I take that full position that is absolutely true. Now, reality in that same realm is part of that. That is absolutely true. Am I blocked off from knowing? Well, yes, I'm always have a barrier of language, or I always have a barrier of creating a model that's going to represent it. But my model is under fallibilism, just like how science is that falsification doesn't just stop because you think you know the answer. You have to be honest and allow, maybe I don't. Maybe if there's a chance for falsification here, we should allow that just in case we are wrong. I think that is a much better approach than just deciding that you know truth. So I do think it is absolute. The truth can be absolute, but can you obtain it? It's a completely different kind of question. Because we might be blocked off in certain aspects of language. But more so, and the better way to put it is that the way we try to get to truth, the way I look at it, and tell me if you agree, but I view it as like we just putting up a mirror in front of reality. And hopefully you don't see any smudges on it. You don't see it cracked. You don't see any imperfection from the reflection that isn't indicative of the reality it's trying to reflect. And so the best model is going to be the mirror that's placed in front of reality, where you couldn't tell the mirror from reality itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I would say that I'm more or less in agreement. I do consider the cogito as a starting point as well, but there are some interesting arguments that kind of put that into question to some degree.
Sure, I would love to go through that with you on a
at some point. Yeah, for sure. And I actually come from the perspective that, yes, I mean, I think therefore I am is sort of the verbalization of that, but ultimately I think it's the experience itself that's a starting point. And I think very clearly we don't perceive reality as it is. We perceive the appearance of reality filtered through the limitations of our senses.
Yep.
And that now that's, But again, that's another thing, is what always comes from religion is this binary, where it's either black and white. It's either you have absolute truth, or you have no truth that you can compare. Like, then all beliefs are equal. It's like, that's not how that's not how it works. You can have a middle ground where I don't need to claim certainty to still compare beliefs, scale them with experience and the scientific method and other types of evidence, and create a reasonable picture of what I mean by reality, while acknowledging my epistemic limitations. So it's a false claim and an intellectually dishonest move that apologists make all the time, which is unless you can sort of use God as a foundation, then you can't say to know anything, and everything is just relative. I don't buy that at all.
Yeah. So have you discovered no truth? Okay. Oh, sorry. Hopefully that answers that. Evidence is king. This is where it kind of gets juicy for me, because he first off says evidence is king, and that made my eyes kind of just whew.
It's so ironic because he has no institute evidence.
Well, and it's like I'm more or less in agreement with you here. So yeah, awesome. But then he follows that next sentence up with, and yet you keep denying the evidence, even though your own DNA clearly spells it out for you. Now, I can actually show him why that's wrong from a level of genetics or genomics and his own religion. If there is no genetic variation within the human species, if we come from Adam and Eve, especially given, and the counter argument for this is typically, well, even Adam had enough to have that genetic difference. Well, no, because Eve was made from Adam, right? When he made from a rib of Adam. So that's the exact same genetic material. So you wouldn't be able to argue that. Like, you might as well just say, no, God just poofed in genetic variation. So to even use this argument, like your own DNA spells it out for you, is like on a basics of genomics, like it's not even possible for there to be a starting point of one human, one female, let alone the lack of genetic variation that would have come from it, even if we just hypothetically granted it to you.
And no religious person takes all of the Bible literally. That's not what it was ever meant to be. If you understand anything about the culture of the time and the way stories were passed down, that's clearly not the intention, even of the writers. So it's a delusional approach to these type of things. And he asks, why is it that we were born as opposed to not be born? It's a stupid question, because we can understand the process, whether it's evolution or abiogenesis or the Big Bang, when there are gaps, and why would there not be? Okay, again, the fact that science is incomplete is not a problem for science. And this is where the arrogance of the religious people come in, which is they think that if we say we don't know, it's like, oh, I got you. Like, now you're in a corner. It's like, no, we don't know, because there are things we don't know. It doesn't mean that you get to say God did it, by magic, and then, wash your hands of the whole thing.
Yeah.
But it's also to ask, well, why is it that the Big Bang was what it was? Why is it that evolution is what it is, as opposed to something else? It's a question that's unanswerable. How could you? And because it might not even have an answer. It might just be. What matters is the fact that it is the case, that it is such, that this is the reality that we live in. Now, maybe there may be some fundamental aspect of nature which makes what we ended up with necessarily the case, or maybe there isn't. Maybe we could discover that in the future. I happen to think that when people use the words like accident or random, I think it's actually a confusion of terms. I don't think that's what science is pointing to.
Yeah, well, it's kind of worse than that too, because it's like, I try to hypothetically think of this and go, hey, Trent, what if you're right? So what if there is a purpose, like an intrinsic purpose? It's like written in the stars, right? I don't know how we'd get to that point, but let's walk through this. What's one way of getting there? Well, I know one way of not getting there, and that's just deciding that this is the case, and then
Right.
not allowing for investigation. But the way that you would get there is, hey, let's investigate this. We have some gaps in our knowledge we don't know. Let's continue this. Let's evaluate. Let's keep promoting education and evaluation for not just evidence but sufficient evidence, for novel testable predictions, for falsification, for verification, for peer review, for all these things. You can hold your beliefs, right? You can hold all what beliefs you have at this point. But if you value that and you actually apply that, wouldn't you honestly potentially get to your conclusion that you have now? I mean, you could in theory do that. I don't think that's the case. You could, though. Like, I think that you have a much better argument from his perspective to go, you know what, I do think that there's value in some of these gaps in our knowledge, as opposed to just almost like a checkmate for theists kind of vibe. Because maybe if you come to that perspective, you go, you pass this down generation after generation, and we discovery after discovery, and then we find out this all was worth something, and we found out the most ultimate discovery, the nature of reality, or whatever it would be. But you won't get there sitting on your hands, like, ever. You'll never get there, and you'll especially never get there when you say it's true because this book says it's true. Because I can rival that with anything I want. I can say any other religion is true, and that's not an honest way of approaching anything. In fact, it's just literally just conceding victory, I feel like, at that point, or conceding to the other person.
Well, when people like us point these things out, their response is, see, like, you're just out to tear down people, and you're just prideful and think you know everything. And that's the kind of response that we get, usually. It's very rare that they'll engage a theist who's actually, intellectually honest enough to give a real response. Usually it's just sort of this game of, psychology, where it's, like this guy, he's just like, well, why would I even bother talking to you because when you already think you know everything, which is not what we're saying. We're saying the opposite. We're saying, yeah, we are aware that there are gaps in our knowledge, and we're okay with that. We're comfortable with that. We don't need to pretend like we have those answers where the question is still open-ended.
Yeah. And to answer a question for Spartan real quick, he says, I mean, couldn't God just create genetic variations like in a miracle sense? Not saying it's a good argument, but an argument. So you can do anything you want. This is how I look at it. You can reconcile anything. I use this example today in a debate. So I had a debate with a guy from, he's a theology student at Liberty University. I might mirror that onto the channel, but I don't know. We got to get permission from him and ask him. And we talked about Judas Iscariot, and I used an example. I think it's in Acts 1:18 versus Matthew 27:5 or 25:7, something like that, where basically Judas Iscariot goes and hangs himself. And in Acts 1:18, his guts burst out from his stomach. Now you could reconcile, like how Pastor John has to me, and other people have done that, and even the guy in the debate, that he was leaning forward, it snapped, and then fell off a cliff or was impaled by a rod. You can, yeah, of course you could make a scenario, but does the text say that? Nope, the text doesn't say that. So now you're creating this. Are you creating your own gospel? Are you creating your own text? That seems a little bit dangerous from my perspective, from where this is supposed to be true, and now you're kind of retrofitting it to make it work. And I see that's kind of the problem with that. You could do that. Like, you could do that all day long. You could reconcile anything you want. I just think it's a kind of it's one of those things where it's like, I mean, are you being honest at all? Or are you just trying to find some way that makes it make sense outside the text? But yeah, I just wanted to answer that real quick.
But I'll say one other thing about that is, all we can be said that can be said that we've experienced is the natural world. Okay. Anything else, you don't have a framework to show that, to prove that it's not just imaginary. Like, whenever you want to give an explanation of a miracle, like as a miracle, as being the explanation, it's like, well, okay, yeah, that's a possibility, I guess. But how do we determine whether or not that's just something imaginary in your head as opposed to something that's actual?
Yeah.
A non-discovered natural explanation is always going to be better than than saying God did it, or an explanation that in principle can't go to the rigorous process of evidence and testing and explanatory power. I mean, any of us can just say, well, God did it. I mean, that's you can sort of resolve any.
Well, yeah, especially when magic has already crept its way into the claim itself, right? So how are you blocked? How are you blocked off from any logical or illogical or rational reconciliation of the claim if you've already? And this kind of goes back to what I said at the beginning. Once you've allowed this magic to kind of sneak into a rationalization, you have adults that now can accept that. They grow up into adults that now accept that for answers. And so what stops anybody from using a logical explanation and now just saying, well, couldn't he just do magic? And it's like, well, under your worldview, I guess he could, but you don't have any demonstration of that. And then when using your example of like the unknown natural things, we only have 100% record so far. It's 100 every single time we have ever not known something and then knew it. It's been natural every time.
And usually people, before we found the natural explanation, the assumption always was that it was some kind of miraculous explanation.
Yep.
Which, by the way,
or magic with a K, which is like a new spiritual thing. It's like all the stuff that's not known is magic with a K, and I'm like, no, that's just really desperately holding on to something before it gets taken away from you. Is how I see it.
And by the way, magic as an explanation has no explanatory power. You're not actually saying anything. You're actually saying, I don't know, so I'm just gonna call this thing X and move on.
My favorite word, panacea. It's a remedy for all cures. You can make it do whatever you want. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, that's kind of that perspective. We're already at an hour. It didn't even feel like we're even getting that close.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And that actually put something into my head real quick is that, and you mentioned this to me before the show. We love doing this. Like me and Cease, just love shooting the shit between each other. I think I wouldn't have a problem if there wasn't even an audience to listen to it. Yeah, we love doing this because we take this seriously. I mean, we don't claim to know, everything and have the fundamental, answers to all this. But the people that do, it's like, I'm interested in those people. I think that those are people I want to talk to because they claim to have more answers than I do. I think everybody should try to do that. Do I already have going into it that they're probably not going to have anything, more for me than I've already heard? Potentially, but I'm not going to be arrogant or dishonest and say that they couldn't convince me in any aspect. Right. I mean, I'm a Gnostic atheist in regards to Christianity, but you know what changes my Gnosticism on that? You just present evidence to me, but you can't claim evidence is king and then not actually give me any.
But that's the irony, is that we get called arrogant, we get called prideful, when the arrogance is always on their side. It's always them thinking they have answers that they don't have because they lack the methodology to arrive at those answers. Mm-hmm. And their arguments are fallacious every time. And then when that's pointed out, they get butthurt and they get sensitive and they want to play the victim card.
Cease, if you have a gift and the gift is always created, but by who? And this gift is something that, wasn't learned from something else. It was just an innate ability you had. What purpose does the gift serve? Let's just say you're a kick-ass guitar player. You can shred, and you never played you never had a single lesson in your life. What purpose does that serve? I'm trying to understand his questioning here, and I'm trying to phrase it in a way to you to see if you can help me, because I just don't even understand what he's getting at.
He's not getting at anything. It doesn't so you happen, there are probably neurological reasons why some people are better at things than others. And the purpose it could have potentially is that it's something you could enjoy in your life that could bring you meaning, because it's something that might be something that you enjoy engaging in. That's all. There doesn't need to be anything else. There's no reason to assume that because you have a gift, it has to be given to you by some celestial force. These are assumptions that he's projecting onto reality because he wants it to be true.
Yeah.
Not because of good reasons. Show evidence that shows how this gift or talent has to come from a god, or couldn't have come from a natural explanation. Don't just state it, show it.
Yeah. I'm actually really surprised throughout this he doesn't attack anything of like me being mad at God or something like that, because like I never grew up with that belief. So it's like,
I'm sure he would have if the conversation had kept going. He would go
maybe, but it's like it blows my mind because I always have to remind people like I've never been a Christian. You realize that, right? Like I've never bought into this. I remember like 9 years old, people telling me about God for like the first time, being like, "What?" Like just being like, "What the fuck is that?"
Yeah. There's a question I want to show.
Yeah.
Do you think even if you became a theist, you would still say that an unknown natural explanation is better than God did it? I mean, from my perspective, again, I don't really understand linguistically what is meant by supernatural. My thing is, my assumption would be that if God exists, whatever takes place has a natural explanation. It's just part of the natural order. So there would be an explanation as to how God can make something happen. I don't really know. I can't really conceive of what is even really meant by supernatural. But other than that, I don't really know how to answer that question because I don't know what it's like to be a theist.
Well, yeah. So it's like it's creating a hypothesis about something beyond nature or suspending laws of nature, right? And the problem with it is that linguistically, like it doesn't really make sense in the aspect of that. Or I mean, maybe not just in the sense of like what we're referencing is that like what we're not appealing to anything because it's just a hypothetical hypothesis about essentially that the only way it gets off the ground is to hide in the things that aren't known. And then it always finds itself having to vacate that hiding spot as soon as we find something. So I agree with you. It does like kind of what are we talking about? And this is where I borderline, like I'm a methodological naturalist. This is where I borderline becoming a metaphysical naturalist, because I'm getting to that point where it's like I'm open to these ideas, but the problem that I find with these metaphysics and these supernatural claims is that the criterion of falsification is just like so like just non-existent that like if you were to provide anything that would falsify it, someone's just gonna, because of its metaphysical nature, you can just expand that criterion as far as you want. That doesn't have a boundary. Nothing breaks the system because it's just, oh, we don't understand something about it, or it metaphysically has different properties that adjusts that and makes that not the case. And it's like, I mean, at that point, I don't even, what we're arguing for is indistinguishable from nothing at all.
So the next part is interesting because he goes on a rant about why it is that we have fingerprints that are unique. Why it is.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. Why is, how come a body, he says, to say that the body as a whole powers a human is insufficient because the body only functions with both heart and brain. So what powers the heart and brain? What accounts for the brain's ability to even generate thought? What is a thought? Why do we wake up after being asleep? Why would a sleeper?
Welcome to the hard problem of consciousness that people in philosophy have been trying to solve for thousands or hundreds of years, right? Like, come on. I mean, to act as if you're supposed to know that, gotcha, you don't know these answers or something. It's like, I don't know a lot of these answers, and I'm okay with that. But just
as far as the fingerprints and
the biological aspects are easier to answer. I'm saying,
yeah, I mean that's why.
Yeah.
No reason to assume that doesn't have a natural explanation. In fact, it does have a natural explanation. It's just basic biology.
Yeah, I mean, you would have to. It would be more. I think just based off of genomics and how my understanding, at least within computational biology, it would be more. It would seem like that would be a miracle if there were those types of. Like you would see those similarities in a fingerprint or those kind of things, just based on how. I wouldn't want to use the word complex, but just based on how things are structured and how the evolutionary process is. I mean, that might be the case if evolution was more rapid and took a lot less time. Maybe that I can see that, but it kind of goes with the length of this variation through time.
As far as his question about what is a thought, I mean, this is the question of consciousness that people are divided on. Some people think that the consciousness can't be explained through natural means or through physical means, and so that either results in someone being an idealist or believing that it has to be some sort of religious, thing. I happen to take a different stance on that, which I think ultimately everything can at least, my assumption is that everything is physical, but that we're limited in a way in which we can describe these things because there's a gap between the thing itself and language. But the fact that the question is open-ended or that we don't have an answer is not a problem. There's no issue there. It doesn't give any credibility to him then saying must have come from God. Again, he's just doing what's been done for thousands of years, which is we don't know how something works. We don't understand a phenomenon. Therefore, it has to be something magical. That's all he's doing. And that has a track record of failing consistently. That's why religion has only lost power over time in the face of science. And now has to pretend like it understood the new science all along. So that's all I would say about that. You're muted. You're muted.
You went for the fingerprints thing. I'm going to back up a little bit and say why is there something rather than nothing? Why does something exist? That whole statement doesn't make any sense when in regards to like your God just serves as a middleman for the exact same kind of problem. So I don't understand how that does anything, but I don't think I'm under more of a position that the concept of nothing doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah. He says non-existence of everything in the world is possible. Says who?
Well, no, hold on. Non-existence of everything is something. So that isn't nothing. That's the problem with defining nothing. Well, the second you like, is that what he's saying? So non-existence of everything in the world is possible, yet the world does exist. If there's non-existence of everything in the world, that still has properties to it. Like that is still a something. There's still the non-existence of everything is something in itself.
These are language games that they don't even know where they're playing. That sentence right there has no content in it. It means absolutely nothing, but he thinks he's saying something. Now, I agree that there's probably some necessary foundation for the universe, although I'm not convinced, but that doesn't seem to be an unreasonable position to take.
Sure.
But there's no reason to think that the necessary force has to be God or a mind or anything that's just not just a natural explanation.
Yeah. What did you say there? Why, if there's no cause for existence, then there's we don't have it doesn't matter. I could just agree with you and say there's a cause for existence. There's a necessary thing, fundamental thing that caused something. I am someone, I don't think you probably take this position, Cease. Maybe you do. When someone presents the problem of contingency, I'm like, yeah, I agree. Cool. Yeah. Necessary foundation. Yep. But it's natural because everything that has been shown has been natural. So I don't from my perspective, not that I fully commit to this position necessarily, but it does seem that if that's a real problem, I don't see how you jump to it has to be a conscious agent with sentience and intent and a personal relationship and then sent its son to die on a cross because he fucked up at the beginning of the story and has to, make up for the whole fall thing. It's like that. I don't see how you get to that. I don't even see how you jump from a natural necessary thing to a non-natural or a supernatural necessary thing. Like that's a big leap to me.
But again, usually I'm the type of the way I approach these things is I try to give my opponents all the ammo that they would want to use. But in this context, I take issue with the whole idea of contingency as an argument because I think it's flawed. How do we even know, given the fact that we don't understand the foundation of the universe yet, how can we say what is contingent and what isn't other than just imagining it to be so? the fact that I can imagine things having been different, in the sense that it's not a logical contradiction to imagine it being different. It's the same problem with the modal ontological flaw, which is you don't move from the imaginary or the possible to the actual.
Well, you don't go to the conceivable to the possible to the actual, or even worse than that, right? Or possible to conceivable. Or it's like that whole thing.
So I don't buy the whole contingency issue. I think is a false start. I don't buy that at all. Mm-hmm. And even if I was to, like you just said, you can resolve it by pointing out what you just pointed out.
Well, can I point out something too? Is that a lot of this when he talks about the atheism thing at the beginning, it's kind of defeated by me and your conversations about things that when I go, hey, I'm not sure if you take this perspective, and then you go, I don't actually take that perspective. I mean, we're just showcasing that atheism isn't a worldview because me and you have completely different takes in certain elements of our beliefs. I would even say our atheism might be different. Like I take more of a Gnostic stance in a lot of aspects. I don't know if you've committed there, but you might not be at that same level. And I hate how that's like kind of like we're all put in this bucket. It's like, I mean, we're just demonstrating right now that two people have different opinions, and we're valuing finding out. Like, I would love for libertarian free will to be true, and so this whole like your pride thing, it's in the way. Is like it can't possibly get in the way, because I would prefer a world where I feel as if I, or not feel, because does actually seem to be the case, but a world where I know I have libertarian free will is much better than a world where I feel like I have determinism. But my feelings don't matter to the fact of the world. It doesn't care about my feelings. If you can demonstrate that it does in some aspect, or demonstrate that I'm wrong, then that's fine. That's what the whole conversation's about. Not, pinning 1,000 questions at somebody and like, you can't answer these. And it's like, it's kind of weird, It's a weird approach.
It's amazing to me that people don't understand something as basic as atheism. They think that atheism is going to lead to all the same behaviors, most of which, especially super conservative religious people, will call degenerate and things like that. It's like, yeah, there is a common thread among atheists, which is not being convinced by God. But I've met atheists that buy into other aspects of spirituality. I've met atheists who I wholeheartedly disagree with on the question of morality, the question of politics. You and I don't, I'm sure there are many things where we don't see, exactly the same. I mean, I think to some degree, since we've met and talked about some stuff, we've probably come closer as far as our beliefs. But when we started out, we were already both atheists, and like your perspective on morality was quite different than mine.
Yeah, when I first met you, I was a moral non-cognitivist, and I didn't believe morality. I was not a moral realist. So I've had you. We sat on the phone for as long as we did, and I struggled with. I just can't accept. I remember telling you, I was like, I just can't accept. It's something about it I can't accept. And then eventually coming through the arguments and doing my own research and looking into, I can never say the word, phenomenology and psychology. I can never say that word. I can say epistemological. I can say all those other words, but non-cognitivist, but I can't say that for some reason. But yeah, I've come to that position where the argumentation has changed my mind. And it wasn't like, of course, there's an aspect of I want morality to be the case, but I didn't have a problem with subjective morality and an objective assessment. And so he kind of goes into this part here about if there is no ultimate standard. I think I've kind of jumped around here, but if there is no ultimate standard of morality, how can anything be considered wrong? Well, here's the thing: is like you don't have morality. There's not a monopoly on morality with religion or your God. And in fact, your God is inherently subjective. If it's commanded by your God, it is subject to the will of the God. If the God can change it, then it is inherently subjective. If God can also commit murders like in 1 Samuel 15:3, have slaves like in Exodus 21, which you're probably going to argue are debt slaves, but don't forget the children are born into what's called cattle slavery or chattel slavery. So they are actually within that system forever against their will. as a child, by the way, don't get to go to the slave, they belong to the master. So if you're going to say that and all those things that are associated with the goodness of your God as you define, then you now have to acknowledge that that is good. And if it's not good, then you are a relativist. In every sense of the word, you're a relativist. And
I mean, it's hilarious that that's the argument that they use. It's
well, yeah, it's just well, and we're at 1 hour and 11 minutes. We're not going to go into. We're going to do an episode on morality. We're going to do multiple episodes on morality and where we feel like we do ground morality and or moral realism. I'm sorry, but it's weird to me that it's like this idea that you have this monopoly on it. The basis of he goes into this purpose thing a lot. Many people proclaim life to be meaningful and worth living, destiny after life. What's the basis for this reason? The basis for the reason is wishful thinking. I mean, people don't want to be left out of the party. I mean, it's as simple as nobody wants to die and be forgotten about. I mean, that's like everybody has that ego. That's what we're born with ego. We get the little part of ourselves that want to validate ourselves always. And so, of course, there's a reason to want to extend that. Not even that. You love the people around you. It's not a selfish thing to want to see them forever, right? I mean, it's selfless in some aspects, and it's beautiful in some aspects. Like, I think it's a great thing that you want to see your family and you want these kind of things. But like I said about the determinism and libertarian free will things, like your feelings have no indication on the truth of the matter at all. And you might think that is a nihilistic perspective, but I'm just a realist. Like, I'm not going to look at the glass to fit my needs and say, well, it's this because that's the way I feel. It's objectively this way based on the purported evidence. Evidence is king.
Yeah, evidence is king, and then he has no understanding of what actually constitutes evidence. Here. Do you single out one powerful idea behind your atheism, or does it emerge from a plurality of arguments?
You want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I'm an atheist, but also, how would I say this? A skeptic, is a combination of what I understand the scientific method to be and what I understand epistemology to be in its values and limitations. So just through doing philosophy and deconstructing my assumptions and intuitions about what's true and what existence is, I am left where I am right now. I'm not sure one powerful idea. I think it's just intellectual honesty. Looking at my condition as this person in the world, and what I think can be said given our limitations, epistemically speaking.
I'd probably say mine is a combination of, it's really one powerful idea, but maybe broken into two. That would kind of stem for it. First, it would be the love of discovery, and kind of attached to what you're saying is, an intellectually honest approach at discovering things. So I'd say the biggest thing behind that is what I would consider the null hypothesis. I'm not going to accept or not accept a claim when I hear it. Depending on what it is, I might just think, you got a new dog, cool, I'll just accept the claim, it's fine. You got a flying space monkey, but probably not going to accept that much. But I'm willing to listen to the claim. But what drives that is really starting from the null hypothesis. So I already start in the position of not accepting a claim just because it's told to me. And so I think that's what drives the atheism in the aspect of that. That's just a byproduct of taking a null hypothesis in regard. Like, I do that with all claims, supernatural, spiritual, Ouija boards, whatever it might be. It could be any claim that you got a flying space monkey, right? I could take that claim and go, I'm not going to accept it. But when I get to, I'm not going to accept it, I'm not going to deny it until the evidence is reported. But when I get to the atheist section of a proposition, the theist comes along and says God exists, and that's the proposition. Well, I'm just being consistent, right? I'm just saying I take the null hypothesis on this. But if I get further in the atheism, it is a cumulative case. So like the plurality of what he's saying for Christianity, yeah, you might call it a cumulative case, but I would just say it's several, epistemic claims about the world that fail to meet its burden of proof, and not just fail to meet its burden of proof. It's actually the opposite of what their claim is. And so it's enough for me to conclude reasonably at a level of certainty that God doesn't exist, to about the degree that I am confident I'm talking to Cease to Know on a show. Now, I could be wrong. It could be solipsism, could be true, right? And you're just a figment of my imagination. But I'm about as confident that that's not the case as I am that the Christian God doesn't exist. And so that's kind of my perspective on that.
Yeah, I would say I'm a little less confident, but I'm pretty close behind you on that. Here's an interesting question that someone, Charlie, posted.
Do Christians mainly say they believe their God has a choice, or that he simply doesn't have a choice to do what he wants because it's already so? Yeah, kind of in that aspect of determined or omniscience. What would you say? I'll leave that up if that helps.
I mean, I've talked to different Christians who interpret it differently. It seems to me, if your God is perfect, then he's always going to act in the best possible way. So in what sense is there really a choice there? I don't know. All these things don't mean anything to me. Like,
sure.
Conceptually, I think they're just incoherent. Like I don't.
I'll tell you what. And this is a little non sequitur of what you're. Sorry, Charlie's question and what you're saying, but I really hope he clips out some of this for his channel so that he throws that nice those eyes towards our way. I mean,
I don't think he's going to want to continue this.
Probably not, but there's nothing better. Like, especially since he was posting my stuff on his page, I was like, dude, you're just getting Christians to pay attention to my content. I'm perfectly okay with that.
Literally, his own followers were trying to get embarrassed by his behavior. Like, yeah, some, were just rooting him on.
Sure.
But there were some were like saying, why do you not want you debating them or at least conversing with them? Like, that would be beneficial to everyone involved, and he just didn't want to do it.
Yeah. Whatever. And I actually think I have to give credit to Trent for I don't know if you guys see it there, I'll highlight it, but he even said I had to kind of jumble the thing around. I don't know if I put the first one first or if it goes second, so I apologize for that. But he said spend time on your podcast answering the following questions I have, for you all. But and so again, I just want to stress that I at least appreciate that he's willing to have the dialogue in some way. But I'm not going to sit there and email somebody that long. It's just not. It's not.
Yeah, but I just wish that he could go about the dialogue in an honest way, as opposed to making claims that anybody with a basic level of exposure to these fields knows is bullshit. Like nobody who studies history takes the position seriously that Stalin did what he did based on atheism. You're not going to find it anywhere. This is his interpretation, because he just hasn't looked at the other beliefs that were operative. So I don't know.
All right. So
is there more?
There's a little bit more. I think I am cutting it close on my battery, but I should be good. For those that don't know, I'm working out a solution for my laptop that has decided to make my fan noise come on if I'm charging my laptop, and it sounds like my laptop's going to blast off into space. So it's pretty unpleasant. So once I fix that, we'll be able to do potentially longer streams. I'm like capped at about like 3.5 hours right now, but it's not too bad. Anyway, so I guess we went to the fingerprints thing. I'm sure we've skipped over some of these because there's like.
Well, it's the same. The thing is, it's the same question. It's the same question.
You just asked a lot of the same questions, and it's like you ask 17. It's like, bro, like you can't vomit out questions. You gotta, you know what I mean?
I will actually deal with one other thing. He says, why be rational if the universe is the result of irrational chance? Is there a reason to be reasonable in a random universe? Again, this is basic not understanding physics. aside from the fact that for us, yes, of course, it makes sense to be rational because it helps with our survival, and our experience of the world. But to say it's an irrational universe is a completely meaningless statement. Reason is a tool we apply to try to discern in the nature of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
So the universe is not rational or irrational. The universe is what it is, and we use reason to try to understand what that thing is. As far as randomness, again, this is not, the randomness assumes some sort of a lack of determinism, which nobody in physics is suggesting, as far as I understand it.
Yeah.
If someone wants to correct me on that, fine. But again, the basis for reason is consciousness in relationship to itself and the universe. Like there is nothing about that is under threat when you do away with God.
Yeah.
So these are all versions of the same question, which is, if you remove God from the equation, why does anything matter? Because we're experiencing, and not having reason, not having morality, not having meaning would lead to a vastly different type of experience of existence than you otherwise have by valuing those things.
Yep.
These are just descriptors of tools that we use and the consequences that they lead to.
Yeah.
So let's just see what the end of this nonsense.
Cool. So the beginning of that is he goes into the womb thing and why would a single sperm of a male inside of an egg produce such a complex and delicate design creation? Well,
open up a biology book.
Yeah, like I'm not here to give you a biology lesson. If you want, if you do want that, like I'm paying for school for this kind of stuff, like you're gonna have to send me some money and I will do the work for you. I will provide you the studies. I'll pay for the studies or get them off Sci-Hub. But anyway, I will get those and provide them to you. You got to pay me though, especially if I have to spend money for the peer-reviewed documents to show you, because people aren't. You always have to give them the highest level of academia, or they're not going to accept it. And even then, they're not going to accept it. But
and again, even if we didn't have an answer, that doesn't mean that you make up one and say God did it. But science does answer these things to quite a degree. It's just a matter of educating yourself rather than doing.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's all.
Well, I was going to say, well, he's going right into scientists, so that's actually it's appropriate that you mentioned this, because when scientists tell you that the temperature of the sun, what the temperature of the sun is, do you by faith believe their word? Is the estimate to be considered true? When should here it is. So when you see photos of space, such as another galaxy, do you by faith believe it's such a galaxy to truly exist? No, so there's no faith here involved at all. They're actually measurable. I actually know people in the field. One of my really good friends has a master's in biology out of UGA. So in regards to your complexity in the whole sperm and male thing, or if you extrapolate that down to molecular levels, I've actually been in labs with him and I've witnessed these things, and it's part of what I'm doing in labs myself. But in regards to space or anything like that, I think you would probably be good to talk about that, especially with the black holes aspect of it, given your family's, one of your immediate family member, who's, I believe, pretty much a specialist in black hole cosmology, right? So is there faith there, or is there demonstration that these things are true based upon evidence?
Of course, it's demonstration, and it may be true that not all of us can take in all the possible knowledge in the world, and we have to trust experts to a degree. But the difference is that if we chose to, we can actually examine those things that are empirically based. And so disingenuous. It's like saying, well, we can't be certain that the law of gravity is going to work to infinity, so we have faith in the law of gravity. That's not comparable to belief in something that you haven't demonstrated on any level ever in any way, other than using fallacies and wishful thinking. Do I know that if I drop my phone, it's always going to fall to the ground every time? No, I don't. That's the problem of induction. But at least I have a framework of testability that leads to that belief being reasonable. It's not faith to the same degree on any level, because I can't do that.
Well, it's also just a really high level of skepticism when you could reach out to somebody in the field, and I'm sure that they would be happy to demonstrate and show you what it is they do, let alone the fact that it's not faith-based, because a lot of these things are peer-reviewed and people are redoing the exact same types of studies. So it's the cooperation of multiple minds. But worse than that, are you taking it on faith when you have a tummy ache or something and you go see an expert for a doctor? Like, is that based on faith? No, it's based on the data that doctors are probably going to help you more than going to see some random person in the alleyway, right?
This is a misuse of the term faith. We can show through the scientific method why a hypothesis that comes from science can go beyond the imaginary into something that's actual. That's not the same thing with him praying and thinking that he talked to God because he changed his life. That could all be psychological.
Sure.
Now, a couple other questions I saw in there was, the issue of evil and morality, and he asked this 25 times. We already resolved that. How do you explain the safety of Earth and humanity for so long throughout time? I mean, that's laughable. Most species, most of the time, have died out, and
99.9% of all of them have.
If the universe is so vast and impressive, and we're can't read what it says. What is purpose? How do you define purpose?
We're not going in. Hold on. Like, hold on 1 second. What is purpose? How do you define purpose? How's purpose created? What is the purpose of humans created thing?
How many times are you saying the same thing?
So he's setting himself up for his own. So you have purpose, like your God gives you purpose. What's the purpose of the purpose? You have an infinite regression of purposes. I mean, like, that's the one. Like, I remember being like 15 or 16, and that being one of the first kind of like philosophical thoughts in my head was like, if there's a purpose, like, wouldn't that beg the question that there would need to be a purpose for that purpose to be instantiated? Like, you would go down a chain of purposes, from my perspective. Worse than that, what I was trying to get to ahead of time is I think he asked us about purpose. Probably, what is your meaning? Is that your purpose? Purpose?
Yeah, it's just over and over the same question.
Attacking other people's purposes. But if there's no ultimate purpose, hold on. Control F. Purpose. Look. 37 times he used the word purpose in this email. 37 times. Look, this is all the times right here. 37 times. I'm starting to think he wants to know purpose. Like, that sounds to be the thing that he's really hung up on as a theist, that he can't get off of, is this purpose of things. Hey man, if you want the purpose of a God that slays infants in 1 Samuel 15:3 and sends a Jew down to die because there's no other way to do things, apparently he must die. It must happen. If that's purpose for you, you should maybe ask your 38th time. I don't know, but
the irony is the lack of safety on Earth is the reason humans evolved. Yeah. So.
I think it went away. Sorry. All right.
No,
that's insane to me. 30. I'm leaving that up there on the side. That's 37 times of saying purpose.
Well, go back towards the end, because there was something I saw there. I think it's towards the end that I want to deal with before we go.
I think this is the end here.
No, there was another. There was another part right before that. Scientifically, where it says scientifically speaking. I move it to the right a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, right there.
Oh, I see right here. Whoops.
Oh wait, what?
I'm.
Oh god.
I'm having a stroke, apparently.
So yeah, is it true purpose? Yes, it's true purpose. We already answered this about 25 times. Scientifically speaking, we are never in the same place twice in our lifetime because Earth spins around the sun and the sun spins within our own galaxy. I don't know what the point of that is. All this seems very precise and organized, like clockwork. So he goes into the design nonsense. I mean, how many times does this need to be debunked? The fact that things work a certain way is not evidence of a designer. It's evidence of nature working how it does. There's no reason to assume that has to be designed or set in motion by anything.
Yeah.
Because again, why is it that he doesn't have the same standard for his God that supposedly just exists as he does, complex as he is? It's just special pleading.
Yeah, it's just entering in a middleman for the same problem, and then invoking some special pleading. And we're going to touch on this with the the unactualized actualizer, where a lot of people spend a lot of these times on these Thomist arguments, or Phasarian, if you want to call, from Phaser. And it's all just special pleading is all it is. It's just creating something that gets to do what it wants, and that doesn't apply to anything else.
And the other thing is that, if anything, and again, this is something that I'm still trying to grasp my head around, that I'm struggling with, but physics is supposedly showing us that our notions of time, space, and matter are not they're not fundamental. They're emergent, which means there's something else there. So much of what he's saying is about the science there is not actually even correct. And then again, it's just the whole we all have faith in something, which is just a misuse of the term. Not being certain of a proposition doesn't mean that we have faith in it the same way that you have faith for a religious claim.
Real fast, somebody said that they wanted to. Axioms on Trial, give me the link to participate in the live stream. I can refute these. I'd love to do that now. I got plans to do, or plans. I'm going to go see my family, and that's part of my purpose in life, is to be with my family and love my family, because I know that they're not going to last forever. And so I'm going to purposefully go seek out my purpose with my family. Sorry, I was a little dig, but I wanted to mention Catholic traditionalists. We talk a lot on Discord. I would love that. But your phrase at the end, I can refute the atheist position. I would love to have you on because you didn't successfully do that with me. So I'll give you another shot at doing that, and we can totally do that. Cease, so you can talk. You've talked to me a lot, so if you want to talk to Cease, you can.
Yeah, I'd love to.
So
we're getting Catholic traditionalists. Send me a message on Discord, and we'll set something up, and we'll have you on. That would be a fun discussion for sure.
Yeah, and I think Graham just pretty much hit the nail on the head. But yeah, I would love to. I mean, I've talked to Catholic traditionalists. He's a cool guy. I have no problem with him. But to say I can refute the atheist position is just like a nonsensical thing.
The name is familiar. I don't know if I ever talked to him before. Either way,
he's a Catholic traditionalist, I think. So
yeah.
I just guessing. So
all right, let's jump to the end.
For sure. Okay, so do I need to scroll through? Let me see. Well, we see purpose here again, guys. So can I buy a purpose? Can I buy a vow?
Because what if God is real? Is it possible that you are afraid to discover and admit the truth? Yeah, okay, this is a waste of my time. I'm open to whatever is the case. I'm not afraid of anything. If you can provide me with good evidence, with an argument that's not fallacious, that's not making assumptions that you can't ground, then you'll convince me. I'm not afraid of anything.
No, it would be cool. I mean, sweet, God exists, and I get to see my family, and I get evidence to know that. I'm on board.
This is the irony of people saying, "Oh, you just don't believe because you hate God, or you want to sin, or you're blah blah blah." There have been many times where if I believed in God, it would have helped me tremendously with coping with certain things. But instead, I had to be, I had to grow up and learn how to deal with those things myself, as opposed to relying on the comfort and the crutch of magic in order to get through those things.
Yeah. As Brilliant said, do you believe, like many atheists, that God needs to be battled and eliminated from belief systems? No, I think that critical thinking just needs to be employed into anybody's thought, and as a byproduct, that will happen. That'll naturally, the byproduct of critical thinking is that you won't believe in magic and these kind of things because they're unsubstantiated. Now, if you have evidence for the case of supernatural things, then we would come to that conclusion based off of, the evidence. But that's not what we see. So just because science is inconvenient for your belief system, or because critical thinking is inconvenient for your position, doesn't mean that the purpose is to eliminate it. It's just the kind of the byproduct of what happens when you are honest about the world you live in and the nature of it.
So this last paragraph captures perfectly why I have no respect for this guy, and why I think
because he says purpose 3 times in one sentence again.
No. I'm talking about the very last sentence. He says, "You're willfully blind due to your pride. Why would I waste my time debating on your podcast when my time is to be spent on those who are truly seeking? You have no answers, and yet you reject the only answer. May the Lord open your spiritually blind eyes and save you from yourself, just as the Lord has saved me from myself." Trent, you're an idiot. Okay, that's the only thing I can say to you. You're an idiot. Number one, the pride is coming from you, not us. Okay, you say that we have no answers, but you refuse to engage with us in a constructive way. You just make assumptions without even knowing us.
You think about how much more productive it could have been if he just, instead of saying, "Hey, read this out," he just came on and you both had a dialogue or something, right?
He says we have no answers. No, we have answers where there are answers. And we acknowledge that we don't have an answer, where the most intellectually honest position is to say we don't know. And he says you reject the only answer. You don't have an answer. You have assumptions based in fallacies, based on very clear ignorance of philosophy and history, that nobody else in those fields takes seriously. And here's the thing. Again, I said this earlier. Even if you were right and we're so close-minded and nothing could change our mind, which is false, there are people watching that may be agnostic, that your appearance coming on this channel, engaging with us, not even necessarily debating, but conversing, you could have changed their mind. You could have turned them to, what I consider to be your delusions. Maybe God could have been working through you in this context to have you come on and talk to us. The reality is that this guy has a huge ego. He pretends, like many religious people, to be humble while saying incredibly arrogant and ignorant things. And the reality is that he is scared, from my perspective, to engage people in real time. Okay? Because he's a coward. Because he knows that when challenged, when his scripts get challenged, he's not going to know how to respond. So he needs time to research and try to find loopholes and other dishonest.
Well, I'm probably trying to figure out how many more times he can fit purpose into different sentences.
Yeah, or ask the same question in 105 different ways. Look, I completely accept the fact that some people don't like public speaking. I don't like public speaking. If he had just said, "Look, I'm not comfortable in the format. I would rather have a conversation on through email." Okay, fine. But it was the fact that he used a lack of time, or why would I bother when you're so arrogant, or why would I waste my time? Like, these are all excuses that are a smokescreen. The reality of the situation, which is he came at us. Okay? He put forward a challenge, pretending like people were scared to engage, and then bitched out. That's the reality of the situation. So have this be a lesson to you, Trent, for next time around. Don't challenge people that you don't have the desire to actually engage with. Yeah. Keep to your script. Make your TikToks about how great God is, and don't come after people.
Yeah,
if you come after people, be ready to defend your arguments.
Or understand that guys like Spartan Theology, Prime, which is Chase, those guys are theists on the side that are willing to have these conversations with us, right? They're like, and some of the coolest people I know, and they're willing to have these conversations. And me and Chase talked a lot last year about a lot of this, and Spartan's come on to our show. He Spartan filled in at the last second, was like, yeah, we'll do it. Yeah, why not? And so there's a line to be drawn in the sand of the theists that want to defend it because they value it in the kind of the same ways that we value truth and getting to understanding. We just have maybe a different conclusion there. But then there's the people on the other side that like, why are you doing this? Why are you attacking other people's things? And then they got to try to, it's just ironic because this whole thing is like, why are you attacking other people's purpose? But then he spends the entire time using purpose in every possible way to attack what my ultimate purpose would be, which is fine. I accept that. Like, that's cool. But it's like, you've been hypocritical in both aspects of that. And I want him to come on so that he can talk about this with us. I want people to be able to defend themselves on the show. He did ask us to read this, and that's, and we have, but I'm extending this now to that, just come on, we have a conversation, because no other theist, Dr. Matt Delackery or Dr. Marcos or Delackery is going to talk with you soon. He's invited. He had such a good time talking with us. He reached out to 3 other theists that are getting their degrees and sent them our way.
Right. So again, I challenge anybody who starts with the assumption that we're arrogant or jerks to look at the episodes that we have. I don't overtalk people. I give people the benefit of the doubt. I try to listen. I try to be respectful. There are times, certainly not on our show, but there have been times in on Discord, or times certainly on TikTok, where I have lost my patience with people. But that usually is a result of complete bigotry and towards certain groups and arrogance and ignorance. But I try to create an environment of respect where we can disagree, but we can try to find common ground. And look, Chase, for example, Chase, I haven't talked to you in a while. It's been a while since we've talked, but we don't agree on a lot necessarily, but I respect you. I have respect for you. I think you're a good guy, and I've enjoyed my conversations with you, and hope that we'll have more in the future.
Well, actually, can I pause you just real fast? As he's mentioned, if you're not busy, he'd like the conversation. I don't know what your plans are, but throwing that out there, continue.
No, I can't do it tonight. I mean, I may be able to jump on the Discord a little later, perhaps. I can't have any kind of debates or thing right now, because I have plans after this. But I would be happy to catch up sometime soon, or even Chase, you can come on our show as well at some point if you would like. And
sure.
Catholic traditionalists, I would love to have a lengthy discussion with you in the future. And I'm up to whatever. Anybody who wants to challenge me or discuss with me, or engage on any level, just reach out.
Set it up. Yeah, just set it up with Cease. Email them and let them know. Let me know. That scrolls at the bottom every single night. Scrolling right there. AxiomsOnTrial at Gmail if you want to be on the show. So it's all there. What was I going to get into? Yeah, but yeah, I would agree. I would say that basically everything within that is kind of nested in these kind of divide between the ones that care, that don't. And if you think that we don't have the pride and things like that, I mean, I would urge you to watch the conversations that we've had. The conversation that you had with, I believe, Colton, Spartan, Delackery in the future, Delackery that I had, Marcos. Look at all those and look at the debate I had today with Michael, who's a theology student at Liberty University. Go watch those videos and see if we're being rude. I mean, I might overtalk. I have a problem with that, but it's not to be rude. It's I want to get this thought out of my head before I forget. But yeah, I mean, I just hopefully you come on, and hopefully we answered your questions. To anybody that's wondering why we're discussing this that came late. We were asked to do this, and so I was a little hesitant on it at first, but then I was like, you know what, these are pretty common things that are asked. Not 37 purpose sentences, but other than that, you know.
The reality is that Trent is projecting his pride onto us, because when he wants to just feel like he's a teacher and has people listening to him. And the fact that someone,
good way to put it,
because his beliefs, the only way for him to handle that is to say, well, you close off from the truth because you're prideful.
Mm-hmm.
It's dishonesty, intellectual dishonesty at its worst. And next time, don't
write it. Don't write a check your tush can't cash. Is pretty much what it is. So,
basically.
Where was this debate? The debate was I can't remember the link of it. It's like Michael. I'll try to mirror it on here. I'll ask him if I can get permission for that, or I'll talk to Cease too before. And I didn't want to mirror other debates on this channel. I might just put it on my personal channel or something like that. So maybe I'll do that. I want to keep axioms kind of to the content that we do rather than it's just.
I don't think you should put it on the channel. I'm fine.
We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But Chase, I'll send you a message in Discord of that once I get to my parents' house and whatnot. We're going to play some Wii golf. That is the purpose for my night tonight, is to play Wii golf and Wii sports with my family, because we used to do that a lot when I used to live there, and that's become kind of a pastime thing. So if you think that there's no meaning in doing that, well, I value it in the time that I do, and if that means nothing to you as a theist that thinks that we have to have the ultimate purpose of some sort for anything to make meaning, I truly feel bad for you in the sense of that your family or friends aren't just enough to you as they are. But with that said, Cease, you want to say anything else before we get out of here? I'm pretty much finished.
Thanks for everyone who came in and listened to our show, and for everyone who subscribes and likes our content. We love you guys, and we'll see you again soon. We took a little break for a couple of weeks because of school and other things, but we're going to have some more content coming out real soon, and I'm excited we have an episode about Thomism coming up that I'm particularly excited for, and other guests lined up and things like that. So
a lot of guests and a lot of narration stuff we're working on behind the scenes. After the first is my last final, and I'm going to be going pretty much balls to the walls. So also December 11th, be on the lookout. I'll have an announcement for what's going on December 11th.
Awesome.
And that will be the only hint I will give is that I'm potentially on an ACA show where Theist call in. And so if that's enough for you to put the pieces together, there are 3 options there for you to make a educated guess on. But I'm very excited for that. Cease, I'm trying to get Cease on that. I know Oz was on that, so we're kind of going around the community and hooking everybody up on those shows, hopefully, and building the community as big as we can to try to, have these conversations and dialogue. So whether we agree as atheists or disagree as theists or disagree as atheists or whatever it might be. So we love you guys and take care.
See you soon.